Well, hey everybody, it is Romania Black, and we are on episode 9 of Cherry Magic, and the rule of 8 did not let us down last time! I'm so excited! The rule of 8 was great. The rule of 8 was great, but now that Adachi has told Kurosawa that he has powers, what do we do with that? And we still have 4 episodes, right? So there has to be some tension that leads us to the climax of this season. There just has to be. It's just the way that things work. So what are we going to do? I guess we're going to find out this episode. But I do have 2 comments as I turn that down just a hair. I do have 2 comments before we start that relate to episode 7. One is from Icy over on Patreon. Icy says, if I were to describe this relationship between Adachi and Kurosawa as a dessert, what comes to mind are chocolate cherries. And I like that. I like the idea of thinking of our couples as desserts. Chocolate cherries works because it's got a little bitterness in it with chocolate, but it's sweet, but it's also like not too sweet, right? It describes them really well. I was trying to think of what would Suge and Minato be, and I kept thinking of like a lemon tart. Like a lemon tart, because Minato's a tsundere, but it's still sweet underneath. You know, you get that tartness, but also the sweetness. And Suge is not exactly, Suge is a big teddy bear, and he's a softie, but he doesn't present himself that way. So I would say lemon tart would be how I would describe Suge and Minato if they were a dessert. And we really don't have any other couples yet, so I don't know. Rokaku's just out here being a strawberry shortcake. And the Fujisaki, she would probably be, I don't know, if Fujisaki and Rokaku were a couple, which I kind of ship them even though they've not really had a lot of interactions, I would call them a strawberry shortcake. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see. And then Anime Annie says, I do love that while this anime avoids a lot of common tropes in BL, we do still get the trope of the one character being cautious about how they are in public and how random strangers view them. It's one of the tropes that I found to be on the more realistic side for some LGBTQ plus people who have a very hesitancy about being visibly out when in public. And it just adds to Adachi's overall self-deprecating manner. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And we kind of saw that a little bit in episode 8, that Adachi still has a lot of perceptions about how people view them. There was a movie that I just watched over on the channel called The Summer, if you've not seen it. It's on the channel right now. It talks about like when people don't want to have their sexuality perceived, which is understandable, right? I understand completely. You don't want to be perceived in a way that's not correct, but also in being perceived in the correct way, it's like, what are people's perceptions going to be? And if you've never faced oppression or prejudice before, are you ready to walk into that world? Again, there's a BL called Liquor and Cigarettes, which is by Azariah Ranmaru. It's just a one-shot. I talk about it on my channel for JNU Yaoi. But in that one, the main character, he's kind of like Adachi in that he's not used to that, so that when he starts acting on his feelings for the main love interest, he starts to realize people look at him differently, and he like has to come to terms of, is he okay with that? And that's really important, and it's very relatable to real life. The coach that I work with, one of them, he was actually my coach. He didn't reveal to myself and my best friend, who is also now coaching with me, his sexuality until we were very much adults because of that perception. And so it's a very realistic trope that I'm glad is put out there in BL because it's something people can relate to. So I thought that was really good to note as well. So yeah, so thank you all so much for the comments. Like I said, we're on episode 9. I've been surprised every time we've had this series with a new episode, because things I think are going to happen get subverted, or when things do go into like, oh no territory, there isn't that miscommunication. Instead, it's resolved or handled. So I guess we'll see what these last episodes give us, but anyway, I'm excited. I hope you all are as well, but we are going to start Cherry Magic episode 9, and we are going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and I'll see you all on the other side. Ooh, the angst! The angst! Oh, it's still not as bad as Twittering Birds. But it's, honestly though, I feel like the thing about Cherry Magic that I really, really enjoy is the fact that the angst and the like hardness of this episode, because it's like, I feel like it's necessary though. I feel like the angst that a lot of BL or some series that are like melodramatic put out there are just angsty to be angsty. Like there's not really any payoff of it other than being a plot device and being like, well, we've got to throw in some conflict, so here's some unnecessary angst. Here, it's kind of necessary because Kurosawa brings up a great point at the end of the episode saying, look, Adachi, you have this amazing power and it's brought us together. He's like, but gives us confirmation in this episode. He's like, I can't tell what you're thinking. Kurosawa is not a virgin. He's like, I can't tell what you are thinking, so I can't read your thoughts. And because I can't read your thoughts, he's like, if you don't tell me what you're thinking, how am I supposed to know? And that is such an important aspect of a relationship, is you have to communicate. You have to talk with one another. And if you don't, then, if you can't talk with one another, then what ends up happening? So it can tear a relationship apart. So I feel like what Kurosawa was saying in this episode, as hard as it was to hear with the cliffhanger that they give us, do I think Adachi is gonna be okay and they're gonna talk through this? Yes, I do think they're going to, because they have in the past in this series. We've set up that precedent, so I think it's gonna work out. But I think it's gonna take some time, because this is Kurosawa saying, I love you, I want to be with you, I'm not gonna dump you, but if we're gonna move forward and continue dating, you have to be able to talk to me about what you're concerned about, and you have to trust me that I'm going to be okay with it and we're going to work through it. But if you don't trust me, in the words of Moulin Rouge, without trust, there is no love. So they have to have that moving forward. So I think that's really important. And plus, after this scene where Kurosawa is just taking advantage of Adachi's ability, I was feeling throughout the episode when they mentioned the transfer as an option, I was like, they kind of need this to happen, because Kurosawa gets head over heels in love, and Kurosawa loves Adachi so much, but he is smothering Adachi just a hair, and I think that it creates this domino effect where Kurosawa is smothering Adachi with so much love and so much adoration, and Adachi, who's never had this before, is so overwhelmed that it kind of has created a complex in Adachi, where now one of the reasons why he's not talking to Kurosawa is that he likes this overstimulation of adoration, but he's afraid that anything he says could mess it up, and then it will be completely gone and he won't have that feeling anymore, or Kurosawa. And as we've established in this episode, Adachi loves Kurosawa and doesn't like being away from him. And I kept wanting him to say that to Kurosawa in the moment, be like, the reason why I've not told you is because I don't want you to go away, and I don't want to go to Nagasaki because I don't want to be away from you. Like, he just needs to tell him that. But Adachi thinks so little of himself that he thinks that saying that won't make a difference. And I'm like, it would. It clearly would. Kurosawa is telling you that it would. So they need this to happen. They need this to happen so that they can, realize their feelings. And Adachi being like, my heart can't take any more of this, right? And Kurosawa's like, okay, cool. But do I think Kurosawa is taking a little bit advantage of Adachi's abilities? Yes, I think he gets, which Kurosawa can't help it. He gets a little bit in Adachi's personal space, because he's just like, you have this power now, and this is really great and everything, and I want to be able to telepathically communicate with you. And Adachi's like, too much at once. Do I think that Adachi is going to take the position in Nagasaki without talking to Kurosawa? He could. That is very much a BL trope. When they mentioned the transfer, I was like, oh, I have read BL where this has been a thing. And I have, where it's like, okay, the one character gets the transfer, or gets, I even think of Daokusei, one of my favorite BLs. In that series, it's not necessarily a transfer, but two lovers, they fell in love in high school, and then one has a job there in town and one goes to a university that's fairly far away. And part of that story is them navigating a long distance relationship between the two of them where their lives are very different, but they're still very much still in love with each other. And there's a lot of BL that have that trope, and it is a very real life situation. People are in long distance relationships, and it's like, okay, what do you do? So do I think that Adachi might take the job without talking to Kurosawa? He might. Do I think he might talk to Kurosawa before taking the job? Yeah, I hope that he does. I think it would be good for him to take the job. One, because they established it's not permanent. It's just for a while. It's to establish the branch. And they picked him because he's competent and also he's single, so he's not tied down with a family. So like, you can go over there for a while and it's not a big thing. We're not, if it had been a permanent job, I think that they could have picked somebody with a family because it's like relocating, which is still a big thing, but still doable. My best friend had a job in the Midwest, and then the company, he kind of worked his way up through the company, and they gave him the option to either go to New York, which is on the East Coast, or LA, which is the West Coast, but he was single, and they're like, you can go to either branch and we'll help you move out there. And that was a thing. So it happens all the time, but I think that what I love about Kurosawa in this episode is that as possessive as he can be, as jealous as he can be, he still puts Adachi's success and Adachi's growth ahead of that. Like, he tells him, like, I was so like, oh my God, Kurosawa, you're amazing. Where he's like, why would you turn down this opportunity? This is a chance for you to have success. Why would you say no? And that's so sweet, because he could be the jealous, possessive type to be like, no, I want you to stay here. I don't want you to move away. But no, instead he's thinking of Adachi. And I was like, green flag, green flag, green flag. I was like, Adachi, you want a partner like that will put your success above their own desires and demands. Like, that's insane. That should mean you should do it. And from experience of reading BL that have this trope within it, what usually happens is that when the person goes away for said long distance, I mean, granted, there are some series where the long distance deteriorates their relationship and they end up having a lot of trouble out of it. But what usually ends up happening is, absence makes the heart grow fonder. What usually ends up happening is that character makes a realization of, yes, I want to be with this person. And then when they get back together, their bonds strengthen, and it makes the relationship even stronger. So I'm like, Adachi, this cannot not benefit you, especially if Kurosawa's like, go for it. Kurosawa has already personally scouted out the area and knows that there are no one you're going to be attracted to, so we're all good. But yeah, I like that also at the beginning of this episode there is communication between Kurosawa and Adachi, where Kurosawa's like, oh, did you get those earphones for me because you read my thoughts? And Adachi's like, yes. And he's like, and I'm glad Adachi said I didn't know what to get you. And Kurosawa's like, you could have got me anything and I would have liked it. And he's like, plus I got our first kiss. So I'm pretty happy about that. But I think Adachi, in having this conversation with Kurosawa, it has allowed Kurosawa to kind of see a little bit more into Adachi's thought process and a little bit more into Adachi, and realize just how much Adachi is very self-loathing and doesn't think much of himself. And Kurosawa's like, you're amazing. Why would you do that? And I think it's important that they have these conversations. He's like, you're always putting yourself down, but you have a lot of good qualities and you just don't realize it. So don't say things like that. Be confident. He's like, I'll show you all your good qualities. And she's like, oh my God. But I'm glad that Kurosawa realizes that Adachi feels this way, because in a lot of BLs that I've read, the main character or the one of the love interests doesn't think much of themselves, and the other character doesn't know. And so it leads to this miscommunication of, why do they feel that way? Why are they being this way? Why are they doing these things? I don't understand. And it takes like forever before they have the communication to realize, oh, you just don't think highly of yourself. What? So I'm glad that this series tackles that in real time, so that Kurosawa knows that about Adachi, because it's a thing and it's coming up in the story and it's affecting Adachi's decisions. But the fact that Kurosawa knows about it is helpful, because it means that Kurosawa is not going to say something, without realizing what Adachi is going through, which is, And yeah, whenever Adachi slammed against the side of the wall after he said our first kiss, I was like, you two need some time apart from each other because otherwise Adachi's going to spontaneously self-combust. So then a good chunk of this story is talking about Suge and Minato's relationship with Rokaku in this. And Minato just wants to get out of there. I also like how Suge has the black phone and Minato has the purple phone, establishing like little differences in their styles and their tastes. But again, one thing that this secret power being telepathic actually helps is that it allows Suge to kind of hear Rokaku's thoughts. And he realizes Rokaku is kind of like Adachi a little bit. Rokaku's a little bit like Adachi in the sense that he has a little bit of negativity towards himself. He doesn't think, he's like, I had to quit to take this job, and that's why Minato, isn't being comfortable around me. And he's like, I'm not that talented anyway. And I'm like, what is all this self-deprecating? I get that we often put ourselves down, but damn, show. Damn. Because Rokaku was seeming like this big beaming beacon of energy, and to see him feel bad about himself feels, uncharacteristic of him. Which I guess it goes to show that no matter how optimistic you are, you can have moments of self-doubt. That's very relatable to me, so I'm sure it's relatable to a lot of other people. But what I love about this is the way that Suge comes around to it, because Suge is kind of like Kurosawa in the sense that he wants, his partner to feel good and feel adequate and feel like, they're not a terrible person. So Suge's like, what can I do? And I like that he also comes at it from a novelist perspective of how do I twist the story? How do I spin this to where it can work? And Suge's smart, so he can make this work. And so I like that he thinks of the best thing to tell Minato. He's like, should I be a mediator? Should I not be a mediator? And in the end, he decides, he's like, I'm just going to tell Minato what I would tell myself, because I'm glad that Suge realizes he's gone through the same thing where he kind of had moments. I like Suge and Minato relating to one another because they're both pursuing fields that are not necessarily stable. Like being an author, if you're a well-known author and a successful author, is a very lucrative field. But it's kind of like being an actor, kind of like being a dancer. There's a lot of chances of failure, and there's a lot of people that fail and drop out because they can't make it work. So you're pursuing a very high stakes, low reward field net of people getting those benefits, and you're pursuing a field that's very highly competitive. Right? So I feel like Suge and Minato can relate to one another, and they both have friends that chose the more corporate life because they didn't think they had what it take to pursue those careers. I love how he relates himself to Minato, because and it's not something he had to really use telepathy to get to the answer. He was able just to figure that out by being like, oh, he probably could have figured it out in the end without using telepathy. He probably in the end could have been like, put two and two together and realized the dynamic that was going on without using his telepathy. But he was kind of like, you know what, I'm going to use it because it's going to speed run this process. But in the end, it wasn't something that he necessarily needed to use. But he did, and it helped out in the moment. So then we have this one guy, Asahina, who looks like he would be the villain in any other series with the eyes and strips coming down, the little antennae. And Rokaku talks about Adachi and how good he is. And Asahina realizes that Adachi might be somebody that could be good to set up a new branch for another company. It felt very The Office. In The Office, there's lots of transferring to other branches and branches merging and all that. It felt like an Office moment, right? Which we've had similar situations happen with the main couples of The Office having that happen. So I was just sitting there I was having a lot of Jim Halpert flashbacks in this episode, being like, what are we going to do? But I will say in Cherry Magic, their relationships are a little bit more out in the open and flourished at this stage than they were in The Office. So yeah. Also, one thing that strikes me as funny is the fact that when Adachi and Kurosawa come back, neither Asahina nor Rokaku question where they've been off to by themselves. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm glad nobody else is picking up on this Office relationship. So then Suge has the conversation with Minato. I like how very subtly they make Minato like clearly uncomfortable being there. He's like, hurry up, let's get out of here. And Suge, Suge is a patient man. He's got a lot of patience. He takes his time, talks it out with Minato. and I love how he frames everything. It's really good. I like that he's just like, he's like, they're just friends now, but he's more likely to get along with someone who isn't almost 8 years older than him. Okay, so we established that we know Suge is 30, so that means Minato is 22. How do I feel about that? I feel like that's okay. Mm-hmm. I feel like for an age gap, 8 years seems like a lot, and 8 years is a lot, but I feel like Minato for 22 is surprisingly mature for his age, and Suge is surprisingly kind of childish at times for 30. So yeah, I think it balances out fine. I'm 37. Would I date somebody that's 29? Yeah. Although once you get into your mid 30s, the age gap thing gets a little bit more vague and broad, because at that point you're by the time you're in your 30s, you're a mature adult. You've had a decade to figure out your 20s. You've had a chance to get through all that. So at that point, the age gap is, as long as how young would I date? Ooh, my thing has always been, if you're closer to my parents' age, no. If on the older spectrum, if you're closer to my parents' age than me, absolutely not. Cannot do that. That's weird. I don't want that weird. It almost gets to like whenever Minato is like, you're like my dad, and Suge's like, on the one hand, in that relationship, the daddy motif could work to Suge's favor, so I wouldn't knock it. But in my case, I'm like, if you're closer to my dad's age than me, no, that's a weird time. That's a weird distinction. But as young as I would go, I don't know. They couldn't be more than 8 or 9 years younger than me. That would just be weird. That's like almost a generation. Like 10 years, no. And you'd have to be like your late 20s. Yeah. 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 Because I think of like the difference of me now than I was when I was 25. There's a difference there. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know. Now the difference between me at 27 or 28 and now, not as much difference. But early 20s, oh yeah, 100%. So yeah, that's interesting though. I don't think the age gap's too bad though. He's in his almost mid 20s. You're fine. But yeah, Suge says exactly what he needs to say, and Minato is head over heels about it. Also, I love the one moment of Adachi being like, I liked your book. That was so cute. That was adorable. That was really, really cute. He's like, we can still make, I like this line too, we can still make friends as adults, but college friends you can speak frankly with are hard to come by. That's such a good line, because yeah, the friends you've made your high school friends, I feel like there's different levels of friendships that you develop as you get older. Your high school friends, especially if you come from a small town like I did, where you knew everybody from like kindergarten to high school, those are people that if you were friends with them and you have a good relationship with, some of those friendships are core friendships and they can last a lifetime. Like I have a handful of friends that I grew up with from school that anytime we meet, we get along great. It's like an instant connection. We have so much history. It goes back. It's great. And we always feel so comfortable around each other. And those are like hardcore friendships for life. However, your high school friends are also people you were forced to be with day to day for multiple years because of a proximity issue. So sometimes those friendships do fall apart and they fade away, because once you get out in the world, you realize that really the only thing holding those friendships together was the fact that you were forced to be in school together because of your districting. Like that's the sad fact about those. Like some of those high school friendships, they have stayed with me. They are still my really, really close friends, but a lot of them have kind of just fallen away because we realized, oh, we were just friends because we were in the same building for 8 years or more, right? Then you have your college friends, and your college friends, I always tell students, if I advise students that had a bad high school experience, I'm like, well, the good news is when you're in college, you pick who your friends are and you develop those friendships a lot more organically, because you're really around people that you have similar interests with, that you develop same hobbies with, that you relate to. And I often feel like my college friendships though, even though I still have those core high school friendships, my college friendships are really some of the closest I have in the world in my entire life, because they're people that I developed a relationship with organically, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. And have connected in so many ways. And we change over time. My best friend and I are very different than we were when we first became best friends, but we're still best friends because of that friendship. But we both recognize that. But like Suge says, you can still make friends through work, through, different activities you do as an adult, like if you join like a pottery club or like something like that, or if you go do trivia. I know people that I've met through trivia and things that activities I've done outside that, you develop friendships through that, and you have friends of friends that you develop friendships with, and that's great. But the core college friends that you had that you can speak truthfully with, those are hard to come by. So I'm glad that Suge says, you don't want to throw that away. Like, don't throw away your friendship with Rokaku just because you feel insecure about the fact that he's got a corporate job and you're still pursuing your dream. Like, just don't throw that friendship away, because those friendships are hard to come by. And that's really sweet. And then you have Rokaku, who, I love that he calls him Yuta. Like, that's Rokaku's first name is Yuta. And I love that Minato realizes that, you know what, maybe I'm being kind of, a little bit more of a grump than I need to be. And Minato's such a sweet character because he comes across as this tsundere, but he actually has such a sweet little heart. And I'm like, oh. And I love that him and Rokaku kind of make up. And the best thing about this is I do not see Rokaku as a BL character. Rokaku is very heterosexual coded throughout this whole thing. He seems very much like the stereotypical heterosexual character who kind of like accidentally says things that are BL coded, and the other characters that are gay are like, okay. He just seems that way. But I love that, Minato has a platonic friend in Rokaku. Rokaku is not a threat to Suge. Rokaku is just a platonic friend of Minato that he wants to have a relationship with, and that's really super cute, right? I love that. And I love that Suge says, even if it puts me at a disadvantage, I want Minato to smile. Suge, I don't think you gotta worry about Rokaku. I don't think you gotta worry about him at all. But I think that your selflessness definitely made Minato feel a little bit like, oh, look at this man. I think it's funny they gave them protein supplements. It was a exercise equipment thing or whatever. It's just kind of ironic that Rokaku talks about not working out or being in shape, and you were literally at a thing giving out health equipment and supplements. Whatever. But anyway, then we have Minato putting his head up against Suge. And I love that he's like, it's because you found the courage to talk to him. How does he know what I'm thinking? I thought he was a weird at first, but he's kind and surprisingly masculine sometimes. Suge is very masculine, I feel. And Minato definitely, I think this establishes who the top and the bottom of the relationship is. I could be wrong. But I think Minato likes being able to be vulnerable around someone, and for someone to be a little bit like a strong protector around him. Minato seems to like that, and Suge gives off those vibes. So that's something he's super into. And then he says, he's like, I feel like I could show Suge my weak side. I feel safe around him. And then he's like, he feels like he's my dad. Suge's like, you could at least say older brother. And I'm like, oh, no. Suge, you do not realize it, but having Minato call you daddy might be something you end up liking. So yeah, anyway, so Adachi is sitting there, and he gets called into the main office after these guys have a conversation about the new branch and the fact that they do tell us it is a 10-hour drive between those two locations. So it's not going to be something where necessarily every weekend you can go visit, because that would be expensive. So it's not like every weekend they're going to be able to see each other, because that is a long distance. It's feasible. You could do it, but it'd be expensive and a lot of work. So yeah. But Adachi is just he gets noticed by Rokaku. I feel like Adachi is also, a little bit concerned that they might get found out because of this. And so they talk about this concert, which I forgot they mentioned it earlier on in the episode, that they're excited to go to this concert together. I do feel a little bit bad that Adachi wasn't able to make the concert with Kurosawa. Kurosawa is a saint, because I don't know. I'm torn. I would have been very disappointed. I'm not much of a concert person, but I would have been disappointed if I had tickets that I finally got to get and my date couldn't go with me to the concert. I would feel really bad about that. And yeah, Adachi says he can go by himself, but that's not, you don't go to a concert by yourself. You go with other people to share the experience. So I did feel a little bit bad that they had to miss the concert. If Kurosawa can afford to get a helicopter for a first date, though, I'm sure he'll be able to get more tickets to that concert, but I do feel bad. And Kurosawa's honestly a saint for not getting mad about it, right? And then Adachi's like, I feel like he's using my powers better than I am. It's my powers, damn it. So he's in a bad mood when the boss calls him in. And for a hot second, I thought Adachi was going to give away that they were dating. I was like, Adachi, quit getting in your own head and listen to what he's telling you. And the worst part is that the boss was praising his work and telling how good he was doing, and Adachi wasn't listening. He was too busy worried about him finding out about Kurosawa to listen to someone giving him praise and telling him he's a decent, good worker. And you could view, I feel like when someone says, I want to transfer you, there's two ways of looking at it. You either look at it as you're getting transferred as a promotion and that you did good, or you're getting transferred as punishment or being reprimanded. Like, you're not a fit here, so we're going to move you somewhere else. Now, obviously, the boss is establishing this transfer as a promotion, and Adachi realizes that. But for a moment, it seemed like he wasn't realizing that, and I was like, Adachi, stop. So, luckily, he did realize it as the episode went on. But yeah, I was just like, and Adachi being afraid that people are going to find out. He's like, we haven't mentioned it, so we can't know for certain. And meanwhile, he's like, oh, the system you designed was great. The customer panel says you were great. Everyone's singing your praises. Nicely done. Meanwhile, Adachi's like looking at all the moments where him and Kurosawa have like been touching each other and everything. And I'm like, Adachi, just pay attention to what he's saying. Damn it. And that's when he talks about the merger. Like, we want you to start a new branch at Nagasaki. We're sending a few of our employers over there for a while. So basically, they're sending Adachi and a few people over there to make sure the branch gets set up, and they show them the ropes, and then they're coming back. But, I mean, it's a raise in salary, and they're paying for your housing. That's a really good deal, and it would be silly to turn it up. Nagasaki is nice, the climate's mild, the food is good. It's not a bad offer. He's like, it has a raise and a housing allowance. I never thought I'd be offered something like this. But you get where he's thinking, like, this is all because of my magical power in Kurosawa. But I'm like, it's not all about it. Like, the thing is, Adachi believes that he only has this opportunity because of Kurosawa, which adds to his guilt of accepting it, in addition to him being away from Kurosawa. But the fact of the matter is, Adachi is responsible for his own success. Like, it may have been Kurosawa and being able to use the magic power with him that helped him to become more confident in himself. But the thing is, at the end of the day, Kurosawa did not get him that raise. Adachi got himself that raise. And we, the audience, know that Adachi needs to tell Kurosawa, well, I believe that I'm only getting this offer because of you and my magical powers, because we know Kurosawa is going to tell him the same thing that I'm saying. And then also Kurosawa is going to be like, he's already said it, but he's like, you don't need to pass this up. Like, it's a chance of success. When are you going to get this opportunity again? And it's not permanent. So you're going to be gone for a while. Yeah, it's going to be a long distance relationship for a while. Yeah, but it's not permanent. You're going to come back. And when you come back, things are going to be stronger. I guarantee it. So I kind of want Adachi to take the job, because that would be good for him. And I think that while he's afraid of being away from Kurosawa, he needs to tell Kurosawa he's afraid of being away from him because he loves him. And then Kurosawa can tell him, I love you too. We're going to make this work. Yeah. He's like, is this what long distance relationships are like? What is this, a drama? Well, yes. He's like, I got a date with Kurosawa later today. And so Kurosawa, Adachi gets so caught up in what he's doing and what he's thinking that he accidentally does the wrong year's worth of data. And so he has to stay late, and then he can't go to the date because of it. Which Kurosawa takes it so well. He's like such a good partner, right? He's like, we'll go another time. So then he's like, Kurosawa is so good at handling things. I hope he's all right, because I get anxious when I can't see his face, because he's good at pretending to be perfect. All of these things, Adachi needs to tell Kurosawa. Adachi needs to tell him. all of these things. So Kurosawa knows how he feels. And I think by the end of this episode, when Kurosawa is like, you need to talk to me, that is 100% correct. I also feel kind of bad. I can understand why Kurosawa would feel bad, because instead of Adachi saying, hey, when I get off work, let me have dinner with you, and over drinks we can talk about this transfer, we can talk about how I feel. Instead of doing what he should have done with that, because he was afraid Kurosawa would get mad, instead of doing that, he went out with Asahina, which Asahina's not a bad guy, but it's like, and he wanted Asahina's advice, which is fine, but I do agree with Kurosawa, when that's your boyfriend and it involves him, you should have gone out with him and talked to him first. And you could have gotten a second opinion from Asahina. So it's just like, it's a rookie mistake. Again, like the mistake that Adachi makes with the files, it was a rookie mistake. And Kurosawa has forgiven him. That doesn't bother him. And honestly, for as possessive a person as Kurosawa is, he takes this really well. When he was like, a transfer? No, he didn't tell me anything. And he was like, nothing. And he was gripping his arm like, no, Adachi never talked to me about it at all. You could tell how hurt Kurosawa was, because he's like, why wouldn't he tell me? Like, we're supposed to be, partners. And I'm amazed at how well Kurosawa took it, and I'm amazed at how well spoken Kurosawa was about his frustration and anger at the situation, because you don't always get that in a BL. You don't. Oftentimes the person that's mad gets all huffy and distant, and it's just a bunch of miscommunication bullshit. And here, at least, they're very upfront with each other about it. And then poor Adachi is like, I haven't drunk that much in a while. Asahina, as we know, can drink the house down boots. He's like, maybe you should go there and think about it in the meantime, which I agree. I feel like Adachi should go at least to Nagasaki and see what he's getting into, but maybe he doesn't have that opportunity because it's so far away. So, and we talk after work. I feel like Kurosawa also, though, because he doesn't know what Adachi is thinking that Adachi is going to break up with him all the time, because he has before. He thought they're going to break up, and he doesn't want that to happen. And Adachi's like, I'm sorry about the concert. And he's like, fine. But even then, we, the audience, could tell that Kurosawa, something was up with him. And Adachi thought that he was perfectly fine. And I'm like, my dude, there's some miscommunication in this channel. There's a disconnect there. I could never consider being away from Kurosawa. But the thing is, it's like, you need to tell him that. You need to tell him that. And Kurosawa can help ease your fears about that. He's like, he said, you'd be ashamed not to. He's like, and the thing is, Kurosawa has told Adachi, quit thinking that you're not good enough, because that's not true. And the moment that Adachi says, I wouldn't be any good at the new branch anyway, Kurosawa's like, why are you doing this? Why are you saying that about yourself? Like, why not? He's like, why would you make an important decision like that by yourself? He's like, it's a huge opportunity. Why would you turn it down? If you reject that author, you might not be able to get another chance, which is very true. If you turn it down, they probably won't consider you again because they think you don't want it. He's like, we're dating. Why did you not come to me and ask me what I thought too? Because if you date me, you clearly think that my opinion's valuable, but am I unreliable? Do you not trust me? And yeah, Adachi has some trust issues. And the thing about it is, Adachi's trust issues are valid. He's never been in a relationship before. He doesn't want to do something wrong. And it's totally relatable. Like, both Adachi and Kurosawa's perspectives are 100% relatable in this episode, depending on if you've been in that situation before. I think all of us watching can either relate to Kurosawa being like, why don't you trust me? Let's talk about this. But we can also relate to Adachi being like, I'm unsure. I don't know. What if I say the wrong thing? And what if I'm proven right? Like, they just need to communicate more. And Kurosawa, bless his heart, actually says that. Feeling anxious because I can't touch Kurosawa and read his thoughts is like telling him I don't trust him. Yeah, exactly. It goes back to the birthday gift. He's like, I didn't know what to get you, so I had to read your thoughts, but instead of just trusting that you'd like whatever gift I gave you. And Kurosawa's like, did you think I'd suggest we break up just because it's long distance? And he's like, no matter the reason, I would never say that. Like, ugh. And I wanted, he's like, Kurosawa is angry and sad. And to Adachi's credit, he's like, I've never experienced these emotions before. I don't know what to do with them. And the one thing I do like is that Adachi, before, one of the things I was worried about was that when Kurosawa first confessed to him that he wanted to be in a relationship, my biggest fear was that Adachi would speak too soon and say, "Oh no, I don't." And I was like, "No, you need to stop and think about it." Now the table has flipped, and where Adachi should come out and just say what he thinks, now he's hesitating, and now he's waiting to figure out what he wants to say. And as frustrating for us as the audience as that is, I kind of respect it, because I'm like, okay, you do need to sit down and figure out what you need to say. You do need to do that, because you owe Kurosawa that. You do owe Kurosawa your honesty, but also you need to think about what needs to be said and give him a response. I think Kurosawa knows that. It's just frustrating for him because Kurosawa is very open with what he needs to say and very upfront. And right now, Adachi thinks anything he says would hurt him, and he doesn't know what to do. And so then Kurosawa says the truth bomb. Unlike you, I don't know what you're thinking unless you tell me. Which is so true. I mean, that probably will be the thumbnail of them, like, of him just like talking to Adachi and being like, yeah, you need to tell me. And Adachi doesn't know what to say. It's hard and it hurts, but it needs to happen. I think that there needs to be a little distance between them at this point so that Adachi can sort out his feelings and be able to communicate with Kurosawa and express all of his hesitations and emotions. And Kurosawa has shown us, the audience, that he's mature enough that he's going to be able to be receptive of what Adachi tells him and kind of dissuade some of those negative thoughts. So as angsty and sad as this episode is, it was kind of needed, and I'm kind of okay with it. So now the question is, like, what do we do with this? Like, is Adachi going to go straight to Nagasaki and not talk to Kurosawa until he's had, whatever amount of time it is to think it through? Is he going to talk to Kurosawa before going to Nagasaki? Is he going to turn down the offer and stay with him after they talk? I just hope that whatever his decision is, they talk it through and they establish that communication, because that needs to happen. Is he going to go to Suge for advice? Suge seems like he's pretty good at giving advice. He's on a roll right now. So maybe if he goes to his friend first to ask, like, what should I do, as someone who's clairvoyant as well? What's your suggestion? There's a lot of ways, there's a lot of avenues they can go after this episode, and I'm really excited to see what they choose. So anyway, I'm super excited to hear your thoughts down below. This episode was really, really good, really sad, but really necessary. So I'm excited to hear what you all think down below. Let me know your comments and thoughts, but we got 3 episodes left. Plenty of time to resolve this conflict, right? Or at least, honestly, in 3 episodes, I think one of 2 things will happen, and we'll see which one's right. I think that either in these 3 episodes, Adachi is going to turn down the offer, but they're going to talk it through and figure out what the next step of their relationship is. Or I think the season might end with Adachi choosing to take the position, and the season ends with him choosing to go, and their relationship is going to be tested through that. And then we're going to have to read the manga. We might have to read the manga either way. But anyway, I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back very soon with more of Cherry Magic.